let's chat about some NWSL action. We've got games going from Friday through Sunday. Let's go ahead and start with Friday's match. We've got Houston Dash versus Racing Louisville. This one's kicking off at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We chatted a little bit about the breaking news for the Houston side with Rachel Daly officially transferred to Ashton Villa FC, but she's actually going to be at this home game to say goodbye, say her farewell to fans, and go ahead and cheer the Dash one last time. And then on the racing side of things, I got some news for them. Their head coach recently fined coming out of the August 2nd match against Oil Reign for approaching officials during that match. So two very different types of news coming in around this team. But when it comes to this match, Lisa, who do you got and why?
So this match, you mentioned a little bit of the news there with Rachel Daly being at this match, Kim Bjorkegren getting the fine, which is like, frankly, nothing new for coaches in the NWSL this year. But between these two sides, Houston is coming off of a monstrous 2-1 win over OL Reign at Lumen Field. The first time a team has done that, and it was the Houston side with the Golden Crown going to Ebony Salmon, who's been a player that has just been incredibly on fire for this Houston Dash side in these last couple of games. Meanwhile, Racing Louisville, they're coming off of a 1-1 tie with Washington, and they scored first in that match against Washington, but then they gave up a goal. And there's something about not being able to close out a game that Racing Louisville has just struggled with. This game being played in Houston. Houston's on an incredible tear right now where they're just winning games. There are 3 games that they've just won. Ebony Salmon doing a fantastic job. But then for this team with Rachel Daly on the sideline, I give Houston Dash the upper hand. Frankly, I think they're going to get the win, take their 3-game win streak and up that to 4, and hand Racing Louisville its first loss in 3 matches.
Louisville's been scrappy. You know, I'll give him that. And I do wonder if we're venturing into the point of the season where, yes, mathematically, there are teams in the second half
Doing a lot of math today.
Yeah, there's a lot of math. I was told there would be 0, and now there's a bunch.
Yeah, this is why we got into sports broadcasting. Yeah, not for the math.
So I think that we're getting to the point where there's a number of teams in this second half of the table where, yes, mathematically, they're going to try to be competing for every point, every win that they can to try to push maybe for one of those lower playoff seeds, a 5th or a 6th spot potentially. But within that, if for whatever reason it starts to turn a corner and maybe those spots are a little bit further out of the reach, we start seeing the mentality shift a little bit in terms of looking at teams who are potentially playing spoiler. And we talked a little bit about that. And I said that, you feel like Orlando is one of those teams that can maybe go on a run and shock some people and get a playoff spot. I see them more as a team as playing spoiler as well. And I think maybe I'm looking at this Louisville side and kind of putting them in a similar category as well. I don't think it's going to be during this match. I'm with you in that I think Houston has more of the pieces to get a win in this one, and I think they're going to do it. Ebony Salmon has been incredible for this Houston Dash side. She's been on a ridiculous run right now in terms of goal production for this team. I'm here for the revenge tour. It's been absolutely wild, and I want to see it in its headliner with Ebony Salmon returning to face Racing Louisville, and I want to see another big game out of this player. So I think that Houston's going to have enough here to get the win. Even if Salmon doesn't get on the scoreboard, I think just like the spirit of Rachel Daly will just sort of break through and be enough.
I was going to ask you that. Ebony Salmon, 6 goals in the last 3 games. She's coming off a brace over OL Reign. Does she score in this one?
You know what?
Can she go 4 straight games?
I think that she could. I think that what the Dash are doing right now in the league and what they've done, period, this year, and how they've done it under the circumstances in which they've done it is going to be and is currently one of the biggest storylines out of the NWSL regular season in 2022. And I frankly don't think it's being talked about enough. I mean, we're talking about a team that parted ways with its head coach on an administrative leave just as the regular season was starting due to ongoing investigations. Had an interim coach in place in Sarah Loudon, and now have a new head coach. And they are still playing the way they're playing. They have been playing without their face of the franchise, and now will continue to play without her as she's officially being transferred. And they're still out there picking up wins and getting results. And they're doing it as a collective unit, which is what's most impressive from this Houston Dash side. So I see this team as, going out there, getting another result, quite frankly, trying to make some noise and contend a little bit with the Shield. I think Portland is starting to turn a little bit of a corner and maybe kind of like dig their hands a little bit, tighter around that Shield. But we'll see. Anything can happen. There's still X amount of games left, right? So I just think on the other side of things with racing, they haven't necessarily hit that stride yet. And you and I, we've had the opportunity to talk to a number of racing players on this podcast, and specifically younger players as well. But this is a team that's in a kind of a mixed phase right now. They have some really good experienced pieces and somebody like a Jessica McDonald or a Gemma Bonner or a Nadia Nadim, but they've also got like really, really young players that they're like working into their system and working in as professionals, whether that's a Savannah DeMello or a Jalen Howell. So it's just kind of this mixed bag a little bit right now, but they're obviously doing enough to present challenges to oppositions. And I have a feeling that this might be one of those games where there might be some of those challenges that are presented, but I just still think that the Dash are going to break through on this one. So I'm going with Houston as well.
I agree. I'm sticking with Houston.
Let's go. Let's talk about Saturday. We got a doubleheader in this one. North Carolina Courage versus Kansas City Current. This one is kicking off at 8 p.m. Eastern. Look, we've been high on the Current, Lisa. Who are you choosing in this one and why?
I mean, North Carolina is just draw after draw after draw after draw. They're coming off a 3-3 draw over Portland, 3-3 with Washington, 2-2 with Chicago. But they've scored in their last 3 games. They've scored many goals, right? 8 goals in their last 3 games, but they've also conceded just as many as that because of all these draws. Diana Ordonez, she scored a brace in the last 2 games for North Carolina. I think she's getting on the board again. We just talked about Salmon with Houston. I think Diana Ordonez scores in this one, but I still think Kansas City is going to win. They're coming off a big 2-1 win over San Diego. It could have been 3-1. They had a penalty kick that was saved by Kaylin Sheridan. Kansas City is just unstoppable right now. They're on a great 9-game undefeated streak at this point, and I think that continues to 10. I give Kansas City the win.
Okay, so we're going to with that. I'm not going to lie. I was going back and forth with this one in terms of draws because North Carolina has showed us that it's tough for them to win. But if there's one thing they can do, they can squeak out a draw. And they can do that against upper half table competition. And not just any old tired draws. We're talking about like wild, high scoring type of draw. So I was going a little bit back and forth in this one. Curious about if this was the game where the two teams kind of match up well against each other, and that ultimately that could lead to something like a draw between these two sides. But Kansas City is on a really good run themselves right now in terms of their form. I really like what we're seeing out of Cece Kaiser as each week goes by. She gets a little bit more acclimated to this team as they made a move for her kind of mid-season there during that trade window. But more than that, I'm also really liking Elise Bennett, not refusing to not go a game without making some sort of impact. And it's kind of been in this bit of a off the bench kind of role, right? But that hasn't seemed to slow her down, which is what has impressed me most about her game. So I'm a little curious as to, a number of things in this match. The personnel that's going to be available. I know with the Courage, it's been a little hit or miss in terms of personnel that have been available for games for them. And I do wonder if something like a home field advantage for the Courage is something that even exists for them right now. I think maybe in terms of like the concept of like, hey, you don't have to travel, you get to stay like sleep in your own bed, and you just got to like focus on training for the game. But I don't know if I think of the Courage and then playing at home and carry this year as something where it's like a tough place for opposition to play. So I'm looking at a Kansas City side to kind of come in here and continue their form. I'm also going with Kansas City in this match. And I would really like to see maybe another breakout game from Kristen Hamilton. I think she's due for one, quite frankly. And there's nothing like going up against your own club. So I hope she has a big day for Kansas City in this match. Let's talk about the next one, Lisa. We've got San Diego Wave FC versus Orlando Pride to close things out on Saturday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. I don't know. You've been high on the Pride, Lisa. Who you got in this one?
I have been high on Orlando Pride. I mean, they're just at a point right now in the season. They're coming off 3 ties, right? But before that, they had a win and then a couple more ties in there. But San Diego is coming off of their first loss. This match is in San Diego. It'll be in California. Orlando having to travel for this one. But between these two sides, despite Orlando playing spoiler at this point in the season, going up against this number 2 ranked San Diego Wave team that has put together incredible games over the last couple of weeks. They've really come together as a team, found that passing pattern, been able to possess the ball with a purpose. Now, the losses that they're coming off of against Kansas City most recently, and then a really tight win over Chicago that was perhaps a bit lucky for San Diego. Have they hit a slump at this point in the season at the same time that Orlando has hit this next gear where they can kind of power through, keep going? I think this is where it stops or maybe gets put into place for Orlando. I have San Diego winning this match, but I'm looking for some goals, maybe a 2-1, a 3-2 in this match, but I still give San Diego the win over Orlando. What about you? Who are you going with? You got the Wave, the Pride in this one at Torreo Stadium.
Look, the San Diego Wave have made Torreo their home. They're going to be pivoting pretty soon to Snapdragon, but it's been a tough place for oppositions to play the Wave against, for sure. But Orlando Pride, I think, have been showing that they can kind of play that spoiler a little bit, and we were talking about that as recently as our previous episode last Monday. Can't remember, but soon, recent episode. But I do wonder if the same argument in terms of hitting a plateau can be made for San Diego, quite frankly. This is a team that has had some, we'll just call them like kind of interesting results over their last, recent matches. We're talking about coming off of a 2-1 loss, against Kansas City. We're talking about a very narrow win over Chicago Red Stars that was incredibly physical, and kind of maybe started to show some card. We're talking about a 0-0 draw against Racing Louisville before that. Can a similar argument be made for the Wave right now in terms of their season and where they're at right now? I think possibly. I think we could take a look at this team and say, hey, maybe they're sort of hitting a certain point of the season where perhaps they're starting to feel the grind of that season, which is something that we talked about very, very early on in the offseason when we were doing our really way too early power rankings and stuff like that. Like, how are these expansion teams going to look in the long regular season type of grind? It's very, it's a different beast when you're going through something like a Challenge Cup and you're just like very, very quick, kind of preseason-y still. But that very long, lengthy grind of a season can take a toll on you at times, and you kind of hit the ebbs and the flows. And I'm wondering if right now this is the case for San Diego. So I just think that while Orlando is doing a good job of being able to play spoiler at times, kind of having those like second half surges specifically where they kind of really are taking it to teams and kind of forcing the issue, I'm not too sure if this backline is ready to sort of contain Alex Morgan, contain somebody like an Amir Ali, who I desperately want to see get more time on the pitch for this San Diego Wave side. I think this is a game that is tailor-made for a player like Ali. So I hope that she gets some significant time in this one. I think she can maybe do some damage, but we'll see. And if she does, I think they'll pick up the win. So I'm going with the Wave in this one.
Nice.
Let's talk about it some more. We got 2 more games to go through. Sunday's matches, OL Reign versus Gotham FC. This one kicking off at 3 p.m. Eastern. Lisa, is this the shakeup where we see the shock?
No, I'm going to be frank. No, OL Reign's going to win this match. But Gotham, I think, could play differently, right? Like we don't really know what's happening in their coaching right now, because Scott Parkinson has mutually agreed to part ways with the club in Gotham FC. But for this match being played at Lumen Field, and for both of these sides, Gotham's coming off 3 straight losses. OL Reign's coming off a loss and a tie. Their last loss against Houston was a very big deal at Lumen Field. I don't think Laura Harvey lets that happen again. I don't think OL Reign go 2 for 2 losing at home. But Megan Rapinoe coming off a big goal, her first goal of the year for OL Reign in this match. We're seeing a lot of consistency from OL Reign at this point. They've now lost Kim Little. She's no longer with the club anymore. She went back to Arsenal. So that definitely changes things in terms of their attacking presence and what they can do. But for Gotham, they can't possess the ball. They're so defensive minded. They can't move forward down the pitch. And I don't think that changes in 3 days time, right? The announcement was made about Scott Parkinson leaving today. Perhaps the assistants took over training today. They've got training Friday and then a little bit of travel. And before you know it, it's Sunday and they're playing OL Reign. I don't think it's enough time to implement a new system, a new mindset in this Gotham team. And Mitch Purse with 3 goals on the season for Gotham, that's probably it, right? And if OL Reign can contain her defensively, which I think defensively OL Reign does a tremendous job. Besides Fallon Tullis-Joyce in goal, they've got Huerta, they've got Lou Barnes. They're just a team that can do so well defensively that it won't really be a match for Gotham in this match. I have Reign winning it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if this is a weekend where I'm choosing a draw just because we've got the 5 games to go through. And also just, again, we're getting to this point of the season where you're looking at heavyweights versus, some teams that are kind of struggling at the moment. And Gotham is probably the definition of that this season. And I don't imagine that the Reign, who are on a little bit of a winless streak of their own, if you're looking at 2 games, they've got that 1-1 draw against Racing and kind of rolled that into that 2-1 loss against Houston. I would imagine that they want to get back in that win column. And I think if you're looking at this game, you're looking at the opposition that you're facing. Listen, this is pro sports. This is soccer at one of its highest level. There is nothing wrong with a team that has a ton of talent on it looking at another team and saying that's a team we could take it to and beat. There's no disrespect in that at all as far as I'm concerned. So I hope that the Reign had this one on their radar and looking at it and saying, like, this is the game where we can absolutely get some goals in this game and maybe try to work some things out in this. I mean, this is a team that we've seen all season put up some kind of wild numbers in terms of total crosses in or total shots, and sometimes walk away with very narrow score lines. So maybe this is a game where they not only get a win, but they also get perhaps a multi-goal game in this one. I think that's something that they would like to close out their weekend because this is a team that's going to also be participating in the Women's Cup. So you want to handle your business, get all 3 points before you participate in a certain type of exhibition caliber level type of competition. So I'm going with OL Reign in this one as well. I'd like to see a Jess Fishlock banger. We'll see, but that's the other thing too. Yes. Who's going to be available for this match? Maybe not so much in OL Reign, but also Gotham as well. I mean, they had a very hefty injury report going into that Chicago match. Things like COVID, general illness, keeping players out. Who's going to be available for Gotham? I'm not too sure. We'll find out once those reports dropped. But we've got the last one to go through here. Maybe one of the more interesting matches of the weekend, just because it's going to be the first time for these 2 teams going head to head. Angel City FC are going to host Chicago Red Stars Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You got a winner in this one, Lisa?
I honestly see this one as my draw for the weekend. I know you kind of just touched on there may not be a draw for either of these sides. Angel City, Chicago, this is my draw that I've been saving until the end of this conversation, the end of this episode. This game being played at the Bank in California. For Angel City, a home match, it definitely means something to them. But they're coming off midweek match as well against Tigres Femenil. So it was their first international match for Angel City. And because of that, just kind of how Angel City's been flowing, they're 2 winless back-to-back. Chicago is coming off of a very big win that they just had over Gotham, 2 goals where they just dominated the entirety of that game. And something for Angel City that they've been struggling with this year is closing out games, right? Before they beat Tigres yesterday, Wednesday, in this midweek international match for Angel City. They're coming off of a 2-2 tie over Orlando Pride, in which Orlando was able to come back and score, put pressure on in stoppage time at the end of that game and force Angel City into an own goal situation. It was unlucky perhaps, but also incredibly lucky for Orlando and well-deserved in terms of what they were able to do. Before that, 3-2 loss for Angel City over OL Reign in a game that Angel City scored first. They were up 2-0, and then they concede 3 goals in the second half of this match. So I think this is a point in the season for Angel City, Freya Kuhn, that they almost need to take a reset, right? Like, look at this week ahead of them, the match that they're playing against Chicago, a team that is very good right now. Chicago is unstoppable in terms of their defense and what they can do to keep the ball out of the net for their opponents, but also scoring goals. We've seen Ava Cook step up. Of course, Mallory Pugh step up, but the players for Chicago are there. It's just a matter of now, can they do it against Angel City? And I think it'll end up being a draw at the end of this one, perhaps a 1-1. I'll give them each a goal, but I see
I respect it. I think if there is the makings of a draw in any of the games this weekend, that this is a good one to choose that. I mean, I think it's not necessarily a midweek match for the Red Stars. Technically, it is for Angel City with the quick turnaround, but also these are 2 teams that haven't faced each other yet. So there's some unfamiliarity there on both sides of the pitch going into this game. And sometimes that can lead to some maybe disjointed soccer, maybe physical soccer, and it doesn't end in like a really high scoreline, right? So I think there are makings of a potential draw in this one. But I don't know. Maybe I'm still like feeling the hot streak of Vegas here, and I want to just pick winners and losers. I think when we're looking at this, when we're looking at current form, right? And you brought up a really good point about this Angel City side. They're a team that we've seen kind of shut it off a little bit towards the end of games, and that has sort of come back to bite them. I think we also have to take a look at personnel that's available for this match, which again, we're unclear on that because the availability reports haven't dropped for the Sunday games quite yet. But I think if you have somebody like a Sydney Leroux that's available, a Claire Emsey, I think that these are players that can present some real headaches for this backline in Chicago that are kind of hitting a reset button themselves. Aaron Wright has been slotted in as a defensive back out of necessity. Quite frankly, they've had to deal with injury back there, and they've had a number of very young players tasked with the responsibility of trying to sustain the attacks from some really good, experienced offensive lines here in the league. But again, long grind of a season, right? How often can you rely on that? So they've shifted an more experienced player in that role as well. And we saw it work out a little bit. Aaron Wright kind of keeping somebody like Alex Morgan as a non-threat, but that opened things up in other areas. So I do wonder if there's room here for somebody like a June Endo to have herself a day against the Chicago Red Stars 3-back, or somebody like a Sydney Leroux to have herself a day against the Chicago Red Stars, because if there's someone who's pretty good at scoring against Chicago Red Stars, it's actually Sydney Leroux. So I'm a little bit curious as to how that's going to look. Are the Red Stars going to continue their streak of scoring off set pieces? We'll see. They're going to have to try to earn them in this one. I really do think this will be one of the more fun matches, one of the more intriguing matches, again, because of the first time against these two teams. But this is also Chicago's beginning of a really lengthy road trip for themselves as well. And it's going to start in a place that is very difficult to play. So perhaps maybe they'll feed off of that energy. But I'm going to go with the Red Stars. They too themselves like to play spoiler sometimes. I'm going to go with Chicago in this one.
I like it.
Say that Alyssa Nair has herself a game in this one.